Hi, I'm Josue Rodriguez, and this is the Misfit Gospel. Good news for misfits. So what's a misfit? Misfits are the outliers and the geniuses, the pastors and the pagans, the stay-at-home crunchy moms and the ones who should have listened to their moms, and so many more in between. So whether or not you feel like you're in one of these groups or whether you are, we all would agree it's time for some good news. Let's go. I have an awesome dude on the show today. His name is Brandon. Now, what last name do you go by? Because I've known you by two last names.
My middle name is Seabrook.
Okay. So, I've only known you that way, so that's your middle name. Right on.
It's a family name.
But it's Nelson.
Yes.
All right. Brandon Seabrook Nelson is on the show. I'm pretty stoked about this because I'm trying to introduce everybody to the people that keep popping up in conversation. So when I had Yannick on, he said he found out about me because of you. And then talking to Kendrick, I met you. Well, actually, we briefly worked together at Vans, right?
Yes. And I met Kendrick years ago. Past South Main in downtown Greenville, near Greenville Senior High School. And it was a low-end, low-key studio artsy place.
Yeah.
And Joe and Kendrick popped out of the van, and Kendrick gave this loud announcement about Syntax are terrific. And I've been listening to Deep Space Five for years.
Yeah, me too.
But I was in my early 20s in college when I first met Kendrick and Joe.
Okay.
And throughout time, Joe and I would have good conversations. We met up. He was married at the time too. And Kendrick came in much later after a big gap of not seeing him. And I think it's through Shelter when you are at Companion.
When we were GVL Skate Church.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's well, we're getting Joe Brewer on here because he comes up way too much. But about you first. So yes. So I met you in January 2019 because I was invited for fellowship, literally the vocabulary that was used, and I had no idea who I was fellowshipping with. And so I showed up. And so this is the awesome things I know about you. You're like a super dope artist. Like I really dig your style.
I'm
it's
okay.
Yeah, man. And so so you can paint and you're a good illustrator and things like that. And you also roast coffee.
Yes.
Right.
And I write poetry with the visuals as well.
Yes. So you've got all the skills and all the areas that I enjoy that I can't necessarily do, but at least not on your level. But I still enjoy it, and so I always think. And I have other conversations in the past have always been pretty awesome. So I was like, let's get him on a microphone.
Do you remember how we first met?
Vans. Yeah. So I was in between jobs, and I was like, I got to get a job now. So I applied at Vans.
You worked at Vans for a blip.
Yeah. It was like the holidays. It was like, he's really good with people, but he sucks at selling stuff.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I did not think that. But we got along.
In a general sense.
I stayed because I was one of the core. And also I was Go Team when they first started in 2014.
Yeah. At the mall there.
Yep.
Now it was just like, oh man, I need a job like right now. And I had gotten hired by this company that rhymes with Schmamazon. But they didn't get me my start date. And then I called and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, you missed your start date. I'm like, you never gave me a start date. And they're like, well, you're going to have to go through orientation and everything again. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I went and got hired at Vans, right? So super cool in the mall, right?
I still
Being
miss
a
it.
grown man, like a grown middle-aged man selling shoes in the mall is like the weirdest thing in the world.
It can be, but because I was one of the oldest there, along with you at the time, I guess I knew my family
Yeah,
there and was settled. I enjoy the culture of Vans. I enjoy the culture of skating altogether.
right.
But being an artist and knowing what Vans was about and still about to this day, I grew into it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't been under the pressure of it being holidays, I probably could have like grew into it a little bit more. But it was like it's the holidays, sell stuff.
Yeah.
But like me,
Yeah, it was.
like so I like did youth ministry for a long time, and so like when I meet parents that are like have this glaze, they're like, my kid wants these shoes. I'm like, well, it's all right, mom. All right, check it out. Do they ride a skateboard? No. I'm like, okay. So what color scheme do they want? What colorway do they want? And I'll just point you in the direction you need to go. And so I'd end up having long conversations with customers, and yeah, they'd buy multiple pair of shoes, but for the amount of shoes they could have been, I could have sold to that amount of people. But I'm like, I'm not good at that. I mean, like doing the cash register, and I see a kid and they're like all stoked, and I'd see mom, I'd be like, thanks, mom. And the kid would look at me, I'm like, right? Thanks, mom. Thanks, mom. So it's like I'm like I couldn't not be a middle-aged father while working at Vans. I'm like I look right and I dress like, but it's like we didn't even do skate ministry yet. It was just, yeah, I'm a skater, but I'm also a grown man, so I'm just gonna talk like one, and then I'm not really good at selling the shoes, even though I wore them. Funny thing is, I didn't really start in the '90s. I didn't like Vans because they're all big and puffy, and I thought they were uncomfortable.
They were. Different logo too at the time.
Yeah, which I didn't like that either. That hey, what's up, Vans? Van Doren retired, so I guess it doesn't matter. But that V with the, I was like, that's ugly. But in like before we moved here to South Carolina, we were visiting some family that lived here, and we always would go over to Myrtle Beach. And I really don't get why people hate on Myrtle Beach that live in South Carolina, because I like it there. Okay. But anyway, why y'all go to Myrtle Beach so much? I'm like, why don't you? There's like an ocean there, and it's 4 hours away. Oh, y'all will get tired of it. I'm like, no. Wait, I didn't. Anyway, so we went to the outlets there, and I was going. There was a Puma outlet there at one point, so I was going to get some Pumas because I like that style of shoe, which I'm wearing right now. What's up, Puma? Anyway,
DC's.
Yeah, there you go.
Work shoes.
But where the Puma store was, it was Vans, and I was like, well, let's go in here. And I'm like, you can't be buy one get one half off, and all the family started wearing Vans. And we weren't skating again. We still lived in Michigan, and so it's just funny that we started wearing Vans, and then 2 years later we're serving skaters, and then 8 years later we do shelter skate churches. I never thought I'd run a nonprofit, so that's pretty cool.
I led a skateboard ministry, very, 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 very small. And it was only one high school where everybody else was in college with me. Mm-hmm. But it was around the corner of North Greenville at a house in Cherokee Valley.
Okay.
And it was once a week. And I was using Bradley Hathaway. I remember using his poetry book and had a description next to his poem. So that was our devotional. And I enjoyed it. That's how I first learned kick flip and heel flip. I was very excited about that day. I remember to this day what I did and landed it, even though I fell. But it was still beautiful.
That's the kind of stuff you don't forget that. Skateboarding is the only thing you do where you purposely throw yourself at the pavement because you might land it. You just might. Because here in Greenville, the city council finally voted that Greenville should have a public skate park, right?
It took so long.
and it took a long time, but I was at that city council meeting, and I got to speak at it, and it was pretty cool because they were just like, if you go over 3 minutes, they will cut you off. And I'm like, okay, I might, oh gosh,
You have a lot to say.
that's hard. But I noticed everybody really just would come up with a chip on their shoulder. We need a skate park, at least that was the feel of it. Right. But I was just like, you know what? I can't say that. That's not where I think about it. I was just like, skateboarding is about hope. You hope you're going to land it, because at the skate park, you always hear that.
We want a skate park or we tear this down.
It's just like, instead of going in with this "you don't understand us" attitude, it was more like, hey guys, at the skate park, you always hear this: one more time, one more, and they fall hard, and they're gonna go one more time. So it's like the culture is more hopeful. It's like, I'll get this at some point.
Yeah,
I'm broken and bruised up, but I'll get it.
Greenville, I'll just be honest, I call Greenville Emerald City. Emerald City as in from Wicked, Wizard of Oz, Emerald City, because it's very, not just the color, but it's much more of, it's meant for the wealth.
Yeah.
Where a skate park in Greenville.
Yeah, it doesn't
Weird.
seem to. I just think they got tired of people asking, and they found a property that'll work. And I think they got a lot of thought process where actually it's normal to have a skate park in your city now. I mean, it's been in the Olympics twice. If you look at it that way from a business standpoint, you will bring more people, because they don't know how many pro skaters will come to Greenville to go to Poe Mill. They have no idea. They just pop up out of nowhere.
They don't care
because they heard about it and they're like, I'm going to go skate that. Yeah. And they do. So so from my perspective, speaking to the city council, I mean, I was like, yeah, my wife and I oversee a nonprofit called Shelter Skate Church. And I saw their eyes go, what? Like,
it's big
what
on the
is
East
that?
Coast. Skateboard is big on the East Coast, especially New York.
Yeah. So sometimes it just takes, cultures to shift a little bit, but so it'll be cool here, but we still have our DIY, and we're still going to do what we do.
Should bring Stevie Williams into the play.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that I'd like to just holler at and just be like, come down here,
I'm a fan of DGK.
There's just a lot of people that it would be really cool. I mean, there's a lot of awesome people that aren't well known, like internationally or even nationally, that have come and supported from other ministries in other states and stuff. And that's been really fun and really cool. And to me, it's been way more important to know them because they come. A lot of times in churches in general, you got the great man of God that you want him to come, but you ain't never gonna meet that guy. He was just at your church, right? And he preached, and you heard him preach that one time. Whereas I found in the skate ministry culture, everybody knows everybody, and it's, once you get over, I met that guy, he's like just talking to you normal because you're the same. And that's pretty bizarre in a way.
Also, pastors, church, all together creates trauma for kids, teenagers, because they've been through experiences where something happened within the church gathering, within the buildings of it, and they see the same face and they already think, if that's what God is like, if that's what Yeshua is like, I want nothing to do with that.
Right.
So stepping out of the walls, stepping out of quote unquote holy ground to be in the mud with fellow human beings.
Yeah. Well, it's not like we ain't already out there anyway.
Yeah.
We pretend like we're not. It's like, I think when I was a kid, it was always in church you would hear, Jesus coming back, you gotta go tell people about Jesus. And then somewhere around the late 90s, people stopped saying that. And then it was like, it's just me and my personal relationship with Jesus. And I'm like, well, that's awesome, but if you and Jesus got a thing, how important is it if I don't know about it? How important is it if you never talk about this Jesus you have a personal relationship with? That's just super weird. Because that's one of the things. If you meet me, I'm married. You know I have children, and you know that I'm a believer. At some point, you're going to figure that out. And I don't know how people hide that if it's real to them.
Also, excuse me. I think with culture, present day, your faith is embedded in your life.
Yeah.
You're given one life. You're a human being. Can't separate faith and human life.
Right.
If your faith is embedded in your human life, it will show, which gives you the opportunity to share it.
Sure.
Because we separate human life, everyday living with, oh, I gotta go share my faith.
Yeah.
If I don't do that today, then
yeah.
I don't get my gold star or tally marks. And I used to be that way when I first tried Christian life in the youth group, and being at the high school in North Charleston, and I always wrote in my journal, I got to share Jesus with someone today, as if I got to do it. But now it's much more of, can't separate the two, can't make it, I want to say mission-minded.
Right.
Whereas all this should be embedded, it should all intertwined.
Right, exactly. Because if you're a follower of Jesus, then, and you've repented of your sins, you say, I'm all in with you, and I want your life in me, then God's Spirit comes in and indwells you. So if you have God's Spirit inside you, are you listening to it? Because it's there, right? And so somebody says, I got Jesus in my heart, and I'm like, let him out. Stop trying to trap Jesus in your heart. Your heart's not a prison. Let him out. Let him do something in your world so someone else can know him. Because, I was talking to somebody at the skate park yesterday, and he's like, I should this and I should that. I was like, why? He's like, well, it's just like, and I was just like, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't do anything. I was like, because that's the first lie. The fact that you believe you know what you should do is did God really say that? Because God knows if you choose this, your eyes will be opened, you'll be woke, and you will, you'll know good and evil, and you'll be like him. You'll be a God, a little g God. And I was like, so don't try to tell yourself what you should do. It's just who you should know. I don't really have a problem pissing people off. That's why the podcast's called Audacity. But I find myself saying that God didn't create morality, people did. They created a gauge by which we measure good and evil, which was the original lie. Here, you guys get to decide this. So people say, well, I'm a moral person. I'm like, fantastic. Are you holy? Do you belong to God? What do you mean? Or are you born again? Well, what's that? I'm like, well, this is what Jesus said. You need to be born again. You need God's life to be put inside you and make you brand new on the inside. I was like, because you're actually a spirit living inside that body. That body's like an earth suit that your spirit lives in. And they're like,
we're all Elohims.
Yeah.
We are all Elohims.
So if you have God's Spirit inside you and you cooperate with the creator of the universe, something should be different. And this whole guilt trip, shame, I should be, or I ain't this, or I've, or whatever. I'm like, look, did he tell you that, or did you tell you that? I'm like, because if you're telling you that, then why don't you stop, take a breath? Because you feel terrible every time you say that. And why don't you just ask him what he says about you? Look in the scripture. Talk to him for a minute. Because, people are like, you should read the Bible more than 5 minutes. I'm like, if you read the Bible for 5 minutes, it might grow to a little bit more. So let's start out with a little snack for your spirit, and then you'll start making meals. But if your spirit will get a snack, if your spirit ain't even getting a drink, that's not fair. I'm like, so make a snack, make some, make a little tray for your spirit. give it a little bit of something, and then find out that you might want more. But people, they say, I got my Devo time. Well, what's Devo? Devotional. What is devotion? It's not. Devotion is this. My heart belongs to this thing, this God. This is who I am. I belong to this. It's not, this little thing that we make it.
We definitely made that because I've gotten away from the concept of quiet time when I can journal or talk with God any time of the day,
Mm-hmm.
pray for others any time of the day,
Sure.
and me believing that everything we do is sacred, should be sacred.
Yeah.
My coffee roasting, sacred. Working on art, sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Me being engaged, sacred.
Of course.
I'm still learning that. I haven't got it nailed, and I never will.
No.
But just the thought of quiet time as if it's a chore.
Sure.
Because I don't mind getting up early. But a lot of times, I say good morning to God.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I have jumped into scriptures. There's resources I have.
Yeah.
But I know, and being honest, it's not the very first thing I do. If I'm in the vehicle letting it warm up, there's times I'll write in my journal,
Mm-hmm.
my journal app. There's times I'll go to Bible Project.
Yeah.
If I'm driving to work, because I live in Hendersonville, so 35, 40-minute drive
Mm-hmm.
to Traveler's Rest, then I am listening to an audiobook. Right now I'm listening to the cast about the caste system, where racism is only the surface of it, but it's really a caste system. So I'm listening to that, but there's still truth and a lot of gold nuggets in it that reflects within the gospel as well. So everything intertwines. But scripture is scripture, and I'm learning also original Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic of scripture. I like that. It's rich. It's very rich because there's so much that we misinterpret, and then, wow.
Yeah, totally. Well, just the basics of it. It's like
It's beautiful.
or like when I teach at Skate Church, and the word sin comes up, I'm like, look, let's break this down. It's not a hard word to understand. It's a thing I think, say, or do that goes against God's will for me.
Yeah.
That's what a sin is.
Yeah.
Or a devil. I was like, that he don't got a name. He goes by his title. We call him liar, and that's what devil is. I'm like, so
Yeah.
So let's take the red suit and the horns and all that away, and just like he's just a really, really good liar, and
Facts.
you believe his lie every day.
I did call my Sunday school teacher the devil once when I was a little kid because she was wearing a red dress.
Right.
And I went to church because my parents went. My dad was a deacon. This is in Aurora, Colorado. And I went to Sunday school one morning. We was talking about the devil. Her name was Mother Shaw. And I asked her, why are you wearing a red dress? I didn't get much candy afterwards. And then later I said, I'm sorry, but
yeah.
That's what's painted.
Yeah, the conceptualizing that kids have is just red is bad. Or whatever, right? Yes, I'm wearing red. I am wearing red, and I just think that my role in the community is I just like to strip away foolishness, and it's like, let's just call it what it is so we can get to the point.
Yeah.
Because the point is, you do have to come to the end of yourself and say yes to Jesus and no to you. And the fact that you don't want to say no to you means you believe the lie. I was like, because if you knew that, because people will say, well, I'm only human. I'm like, yeah, and humans were made in God's image. So what? Because I'm like, so you mean you want to define yourself by this suit your spirit lives in? When God supernaturally breathed himself into the suit you live in, and that is who you are. The spirit is who you are. And when this body drops, that spirit is going to go back to where it came from. But because of the life you lived in that suit, it's whether or not the spirit gets to go home. And I'm like, when you get there, he's either going to say, welcome home, or I don't know you. I'm like, so if you would take the suit a lot less seriously and more the fact that you come from the Creator, you come from outside of this, you know, a lot it makes people uncomfortable because I'm not using Bible words, but the reality is, uh, uh, God is bigger than we want Him to be.
Yeah.
We want God to be small so that we can make ourselves smaller. I don't have to think that big of me if God isn't that big. If God is moral, then I can be less moral. And it's like I don't ever have to live up to what God says. As long as God wants me to do good, I can claim to be good. Because who says that who would call themselves bad? No one ever. Murderers call themselves good at some point. They make excuses for what they did, and then, I'll make an excuse for not really wanting to do a good job at work.
Yeah.
But this, it comes down to is really, are you willing to be more than what you think you are? Because God is more than what you think you are, and God made you more than what you think you are. You just not cooperating with it.
For me, I like to see the best version of myself come out. Romans 12:2, Message translation. God will bring the best out of you, develop well-formed maturity in you. I like that translation of it because there is this best part of us,
Mm-hmm.
the best in us, but it's still trapped because we're not making effort to be obedient.
Right.
When God says that God's working in you for you to be able and willing to obey. Philippians
Right. Exactly.
2:13.
Well, Jesus said, "If you love me, you'll obey my commands," which I don't think of it as retributive, meaning like if you were doing what I said, you would prove you love me. I think he's saying you're doing what I said because you love me. The fact that you want to do what I want means you love me.
Yeah.
So it's like, so if someone comes at me with the I shoulds, I'm like, do you want to do what Jesus wants? Well, yeah. I'm like, well, start there.
Yeah. Obedience is action. Listening is doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, what Jesus said, I only do what I'm told. I only say what I'm told to say. I only go where I'm told to go. And that's supernatural living, because everything in the natural says, don't do that. It doesn't feel right. So if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And having to live in this suit that's tainted with that selfishness, you have to bypass the algorithm that is in this body, and the only way to do it is going low. It's like being a follower of Jesus is the ultimate rebellion, because you have to rebel against yourself. You have to rebel against the person in the mirror, and everybody wants to be a rebel. So let's just redefine the word, and say, hey, everything you want, if it don't line up with what God wants, rebel. and so I love saying that kind of stuff, because people go, what? And like most of these skaters, they go, huh? And I'm like, well, I've never heard it that way before. I'm like, I know. Well, now you have.
Yeah. Makes sense. Rebel. Yeah.
Well, I mean, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, the Bible said, but rebellion against God, right? But if I'm rebelling against my enemy, then who am I cooperating with? Cooperating with God is rebellion against the lie, right? So we don't want to cooperate with the liar, right? So like 1 John chapter 3 says, the person who keeps on sinning is of the devil, and he's been sinning from the beginning, and Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil. So the person who does whatever they want is cooperating with the liar. That's they're on the same team inadvertently, and Jesus wants to destroy that lie that we believe, so we can be free of that should. Right? Don't should on yourself. It's really messy. It's not good. So what's the deal? How'd you get into coffee?
By invitation. January 2008. Tara Edens, who used to work at Leper Forest and later Methodical. She's not there anymore, but she invited me to coffee. And at the time, there was only 2 coffee shops in Greenville.
Okay.
Starbucks was still on the rise. And at the time, it was Leper Forest and Coffee and Crema, which is near Fresh Market, South Pleasantburg. Same plaza.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not know what I was doing. The training was pretty fast. And later in years, they said, we apologize for not training you well. But at the time, it was go, 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 go. So I became a barista. And then later, I was put in production because I wasn't doing so well in being a barista. And it was 2.5 years of Leper Forest, but it grew on me because I went to my first coffee conference in 2009.
Okay.
And afterwards, I met Alex Medina, who is owner of Junzo Coffee. And after I graduated again from North Greenville, because at the time, they didn't have a 4-year art degree.
Okay.
So I got my associate's first, and then later I got my bachelor's in art. December 13th, 2010, I started with Starbucks, Cherrydale Starbucks, because I snuck in. I went back into coffee through Barnes & Noble's Haywood, and then stayed there for a month and stuck my way into Starbucks because I've been wanting to go.
Okay.
And I stayed with Starbucks for 7 years and learned a lot. Customer service, coffee. I was nomadic, meaning I did not stay in one particular area.
Mm-hmm.
There's times I transfer, there's times I'm covering shifts. And ended up leaving Starbucks 2017 and became a brewer's assistant at 13 Stripes during that time before I left Starbucks in May 2017, a few weeks after they opened. And stuck with them for a while. And then after that, Bridge City came about in 2018. But before that, I was at Lowe's Foods in Greer in the beer den.
All right. Yeah.
And I was bartending there for a little bit. Bridge City came about in 2018 for me because Greg and John, the only 2 guys there, started in 2017.
Okay.
And I was trying to get back into the coffee scene, but it is very hard because a lot of it is timing. And then in my world, I'm thinking there's not many Black people that work in the especially coffee scene in Greenville.
Right.
Or is none. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to get my foot back in the door with that. And then I met John through shadowing Will Schultz, Methodical. And then I met Greg. I didn't know those 2 knew each other. And Greg pulled me aside, took me over to GB&D in West Greenville. And he asked me my story of getting back into coffee. And I brought in a Dietrich Bonhoeffer piece to put at GB&D. But because of my directness with my artwork, the owner, who's very cool, he could not allow it, even though he's a fan. But my portrait of Dietrich had one eye with a cross because he was a German pastor who was German, and one eye with a swastika because of what he was doing at the time. Right. So think about it. You put a portrait of Dietrich Bonhoeffer with swastika in one eye, you think people are going to probably look more at that swastika than the cross. Yeah. Is what it is. But anyways, Greg stopped me because Dietrich's his hero and let me share my story of getting back into coffee. And May 5th, 2018, I joined Bridge City. We were in Anderson, and it was only Greg, John, and myself in a storage unit, roastery and wholesale. That was it. And then January 5th, 2019, we opened our first shop, Wade Hampton.
Okay, yeah.
And been with them ever since. So I'm 6.5 years in. First employee with Bridge City. And last year, well, still 2024, so technically I'm still Roaster of the Year with Bridge City, which is a prestigious award. It's international through a popular magazine company called Roast Magazine. very, very, very solid with coffee altogether. But we won that, and it's been growing ever since then.
That's
as
awesome. That's awesome.
as a coffee roaster, as a human being.
So what does that
And
mean to you, though, to get to the place with this long journey with coffee to actually be a coffee roaster, though?
it started, I mean, the first beans I roasted was Nostalgia.
Oh, that's my favorite. Nostalgia is my
We
favorite.
got more beans
for real.
coming that's going to be more dark roast than Nostalgia, to be honest. I like it, but I'm always trying to improve it, of course. And I guess because of my brain and how I work, it's things that pick up along the way, and I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
So I understand it more in here, but when it comes to sharing it, it's really hard. And I have a hard problem with my speech, so I'm trying to slow down. That's
Yeah.
just me,
Mhm.
you know. And it's hard to teach it, but I try to simplify it to where people can understand it if I'm teaching someone how to roast, but being more visual as well. And how I understand it is cooking. It's cooking. That's all it is. It's really cooking. So all these things that I've read, watched, it applies, but practice, practice, practice helps me be better in what I do.
So would you say it's developing you personally as you develop your skill set?
Yeah, it goes back to what I shared earlier. Everything is sacred because I get to do this and it gives me joy.
Right.
And I was even sharing with God today that I hope this gives you joy and I hope it blesses you, but I need your strength to do that because
Right.
I'm no one good.
Yeah.
Have a hard time loving myself, and He knows my challenges. He knows.
Yeah.
God knows my embedded weaknesses.
Uh-huh.
So it's constantly giving it to Him as a offering. Like, I hope I get to do my best today,
Yeah.
but also I get to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that because that's personal.
It is.
That's personal. I was like, it's just like, I lived my life for you today, and I hope this was good for you. I mean, really, that's really relational, and that's a big God.
Yep.
But that's a bigger God than a lot of people. A lot of people would not want to talk to God that way. That feels weird. That's really personal.
I credit the Shaq on that one too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because of how personal it is and how God talks with the main character.
Yeah.
And the reasons why.
Yeah.
But God's a relational God. I mean, 3 in 1.
Right.
And how He communicated throughout the scriptures, whether it's insanely crazy or
yeah,
God is crazy. It is what it is. But the intimacy too of how God communicates to everyone in the scriptures, the ones He selected, the ones that people wouldn't think God would talk with, would talk to.
Yeah.
Jesus. I like to say Yeshua better.
Yeah.
Yeshua, fully human, fully God. But I like the fact that He showed His humanity.
Yeah.
He can easily show His divinity, but I like the fact that He was more human than being divine, because you go to Philippians 2, He didn't want, like, He knew who He was, like He know His role, but also, I'm just going to become human and dwell with these people.
We're gonna put that on hold.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean like Jesus.
Gotcha.
Right. See, I'm trying to track with what you're saying. Jesus is like, I'm gonna put this on hold because I can just call down their fire and we'll start over.
Right.
But He's like, no, okay. This is how I'm gonna show them my Father.
Yeah.
So He can be your Father.
Yeah.
And which was like, people are either like super excited about that or they're like, nah, I don't like that.
He was angry.
Yeah.
He had second thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he was a beep to his parents when he was a kid. No, he was very smart as a kid because he was very smart as a kid because that's only recorded in Luke. He was very direct, but we don't know his childhood. We don't know
No,
if
I
he
mean,
played with
yeah,
other kids.
the account of him at the temple, it just proves, well, Mike, a lot of kids are very, very aware of themselves, but they don't have the life experience to do anything with it. And I just think, I mean, I love the account where he's amazing. The teachers of the law, they're like tripping out, but his parents are like, boy,
Yeah.
oh no, I bet you, you know, it's like, not today,
He
son.
made it sound as if he's a prodigy at 12,
Yeah,
11, 12 years old.
yeah. So that's always, there's a lot of questions in there because they were always asking, who is your teacher? Where do you get this authority from?
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, my dad taught me. I mean, there may have been, because I have those conversations too, where it could have been, John's dad. It could have been Zechariah who taught him,
Facts.
but at the same time, Jesus grew into who he was because I think he just learned to absorb it. And I think his awareness came quickly because, at 12, it does say that, after his stint in Jerusalem, it says, and after that he did what he was told, and he grew in stature and approval of man. So it was like he got on a straight and narrow. His own straight.
It makes me wonder because I wanted to do a art composition off it, but Joseph, because we have this stigma of what fatherhood looks like in America.
Yeah.
And what's recorded in scripture is completely opposite of what we think of fatherhood. Joseph stuck around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He wanted to.
Right.
He wanted to leave, though, but he chose to stick around.
He had a right to leave.
Huh?
He had the rights to leave.
Yeah. Every right to leave. And I wonder, after Yeshua grew up, where did he go? He's not mentioned anymore. So it makes me wonder, what did that look like? Like, what was his upbringing like? What was Yeshua's upbringing like with just him and his mom if Joseph was not in the picture later?
Yeah, I mean, because my presumption is always that he died. So then the question is, how old was he when he married Mary? Those kind of things. My presumption has always been that he was a little older and he died.
Yeah.
Making Jesus the eldest son in charge of everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I saw this reel where this Anglican priest was trying to make a point that Jesus was a sinner like us. And I'm like, because of all his choices and things he said and did. And I'm like, you just took all the Jewish out of the Bible and you made it American, all because he lost his temper at the temple flipping tables. That was a sin and that was bad. I'm like, you're on crack. That doesn't even make any kind of sense. Or when his family and comes to see him and he's teaching, and it's like, my family is everybody that does the will of my Father. You guys got to hold on a minute, right? That's because he's the eldest of the family, and that means he's in charge of them. And he's like, but I'm in charge of all of these people.
I think Yeshua is in a pissy mood as well, because you think about it, that came right after he cursed the fig tree.
Right. So I mean, okay, so Jesus get an attitude, but Jesus getting an attitude doesn't mean he's a sinner.
No.
Right? Then I see what I mean, so
yeah, I see what you mean.
So because this priest just had this list of this, but I'm like, he couldn't have died for our sins then. And he wouldn't have been the Son of God. The whole thing that makes you a priest just got thrown out the window with
God cannot be angry.
Yeah, God can't get angry. God's always got to be nice and polite. And Jesus in Rome, he lived in a pluralist society where it's like Rome is the oppressor, But they're like, hey, as long as you recognize Caesar as God and you pay us our money, do you? Everybody gets to be right. And that reminds me of a country that I've live in. If everybody gets to be right, everybody wants to be right, you get to be right. Just stay in line when you're supposed to, depending on who the leader is. I mean, that's the generality, but that's Western thinking, really. It's the lie.
Yeah.
We're all right. We all do what we think is right. So as long as you're not doing the wrong thing that I think is wrong, we're good. Right. And that's what I tell skaters. I'm like, when you say someone's good, you really mean that they don't piss you off or they don't annoy you. And they go, I'm like, well, that's why you call someone good, because if good is God, then everybody has a different kind of standard. You just call people good because they don't annoy you.
Yeah. And also how we use the word good anyways.
Exactly.
Wrong English.
So what is good, right? So I just really, welcoming God into everything that you do, everything that you are. That's like me, when I wake up in the morning, I don't turn all the lights on. I don't want to wake up anybody when I'm getting ready for work. And so I just, like, me being neurodivergent, I forget half the things I'm supposed to do anyway. So I have to prepare everything before then. I have to make my lunch. I have to grind the coffee, put it in so I just have to push the button. So everything's turnkey as soon as I wake up, or I'll forget, or I'll go to work without lunch. But it's been that. So with that means, so I don't have to turn on all the lights.
Yeah. And
so like my wife gets up and she's like, why are all the lights off? I was like, I'm just chilling before I have to go to work. I'm like, I'm good. It's, sometimes I'm reading the scripture just on my phone. And then sometimes I'm just sitting there.
Yeah. I'm
getting ready to leave and getting my mind ready to go. And then, and so it's like, I have to like prepare myself to go out into a world where I am overwhelmed really quickly. And so I'm like, I don't mind sitting in the dark for a minute. And then she turns on the light. She goes, it's dark in here. I'm like, okay. I think it's fine. No, she didn't say that. But I mean, sometimes it just feels like we're like the complete opposite person. It's like, I know the lights are off, but I'm just relaxing.
You're Sherlock Holmes. You just need a violin. No, don't open the curtains.
No. So no, I'm not throwing my wife under the bus. I was making a really dumb joke, but okay. That's part of who I am. I say random things. I'm like, yeah, that didn't sound the way it sounded in my head. But whenever my kids would do that, Dad, why is it dark in here? But then they turn on the TV, which is more blinding than turning on the kitchen light, which is weird. It's like, whoa, what are you? No, go back to bed. Bright. Why are you up? But yeah, so I just think that when we are welcoming God into everything, I think we've got to be okay with being not okay. I mean, that's a thing, but you also got to be okay with being okay. I don't think a lot of people are okay with being okay with God in their brokenness. Now, I'm not saying everybody's getting in. What I mean is, upon receiving Jesus and putting all your faith in him, and you recognize your brokenness, God is okay with your brokenness. That's why you needed to be saved. That's why you needed him in the first place. If you weren't broken, you wouldn't need any help. So I think a lot of people, the more, like when I first read The Shack,
yeah,
I had to put it down. It was too much. The concept that God being that, I know The Shack is a novel. If anybody that watches this is getting all up in their feelings about it, I'm like, stop it.
Right.
The concept of grace in that book was a lot for me at that time, because I had just been divorced and I was like extremely depressed. I was like on the verge of suicide. There's like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I read it and I was like, it was like super hard because I'm like, this grace stuff is like too much. And so I didn't finish it right away. And so the idea that, we want to be human and broken, but you let that be the deciding factor where we can count ourselves out.
Yeah.
But then God's like, no. You're broken, I accept you.
Mhm.
Again, acceptance is not approval for all the haters that might be all up in the chat. I'm assuming I'm gonna have haters in the chat. Why not? It's life. But if there's no haters in this chat, then so be it. Nonetheless, acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is come closer. That's grace. Come closer and sit next to me.
Yeah.
I'm really not as worried about you as you are. You know.
I have a hard time with grace. I have a hard time with forgiveness.
Oh yeah, I mean, because we are sheep in wolves' clothing. We scare ourselves. God's like, you need to put that down. Just stop. It's kind of like with my son is 5. So when I first met you, my wife was pregnant with my son Micah, and so Micah is a ball of energy. You know, he's got long sandy blonde hair, blue eyes. He just looks like this little surfer, and he just is like, wow. And he goes at the skate park and goes all out on his balance bike. And he's just, skaters are like, how'd you teach him to do that? I'm like, I didn't teach him nothing. He watches you guys and he just does it,
He's Jay Adams. He's
Dogtown. As long as he saved Jay Adams, not the first version of Jay Adams. But yes, J Boy Adams. Wow, if J Boy Adams had been J Boy Adams and had always been a believer, that would have been a trip. You know what I mean? I mean, just think about it. The timestamp on skateboarding, if it started out Christian, that's a trip. Because like I was at a skate ministry conference and they were talking about people say, well, how do you pray for skateboarding? Do you pray for Tony Hawk to get saved? And they're like, no, you pray for the editor of Thrasher magazine.
You wonder how Jamie Thomas, if he was ever to come and speak, makes you wonder how his life is lived on a day-to-day basis, because he's around people who may not agree with what he believes, but there's a lot of love because they know where he stands, but also they're brothers, they're family.
Oh yeah, totally. I heard his story on another podcast, Brian Sumner's podcast. What's up, Brian? And it's a really good story, about his journey of following the Lord in belief and being famous and owning a business and it being zero. And that's a big deal, right? But like all of the people, when you hear their stories, or like Hosoi, like when I met Christian Hosoi, I was trying not to freak out and I didn't do very good, but because I was like, this dude used to be on my wall when I was like 12, right? But it was really weird. But so I tried to be like super spiritual, and I was like, so what do you think of this revival in the skate culture in Southern California? He goes, it's not a revival. He goes, the revival is for the church. He said, it's an awakening. And I was like, yes, sir, you are right. Will you sign this for me, please?
There's one person I've been wondering about is Rodney Mullen, because he's very articulate.
Yeah.
He's definitely on the spectrum. I did a painting about him, and that one sold, thankfully. I saw him one time on a video. I think it was the re-release of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Uh-huh.
And I think Jack Black was interviewing all of them, the OGs. And I saw Rodney Mullen with a cross on his neck. Don't know. I didn't want to assume.
Yeah.
He's just very quiet, down-to-earth dude, and very humble.
But he seems very joyful also.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
But he's very, like, if he was present with us right now,
yeah,
I would just sit down and listen. I don't need to ask him any questions, because as if you're in a class and he's teaching.
Well, I mean, how many tricks did he create that no one really acknowledges? Like, and I go to a skate park and they just call me an old head because I'm like, you don't even know who created that trick you're doing.
Facts.
I'm like, you have no idea that majority of these tricks are either directly from Rodney or are derivative of something he created.
Yeah.
They're out there. I gotta get this clip. I'm like, no, you don't. You're not even having fun. You are not even having fun. If I was a kid and we was all this clips and social media, I would have never ridden a skateboard. It would have stressed me out. These kids stress me out now. Josue, you only cruise? I'm like, yeah, I only cruise. This is skateboarding. I was like, you're doing tricks. Skateboarding is riding the thing. I was like, yeah, it cruise. I'm blind in my left eye. I can't do too many things. And I'm neurodivergent, so I'm constantly worried about what's going to happen next. And I'm 48. Give me a break.
Yep. Bones. We got bones. They can easily snap.
I'm like, give me a break. I was standing on a skateboard before you were even thought of. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I was like, I ain't mad at you. You mad at me? They're like, no, I ain't mad at you. I'm like, okay, but you are annoying me. But no, it's just fun because it's important. Well, like with the faith, when people won't read the Old Testament, because there's a New Testament, I'm like, it's not like I've been really thinking. I've thought about this lately. I'm like, old doesn't mean bad. It means it's actually the original agreement between God and Abraham and the living by faith.
Yeah.
And then all the patriarchs and all the people came. And then Jesus is the fulfillment of the agreement.
Yeah. And
So
it's
I'm
very,
like-
very rich.
I'm like,
There's-
obviously, I'm not saying we should change the book and say,
No.
don't call it Old Testament. But I'm like, what it means is the beginning, the original agreement, and then the fulfillment of the agreement. We're living in the fulfillment of the agreement.
I mean, love the Lord your God did not come in until Deuteronomy 4 because that was the Shema,
Right.
which means to listen, which
Right.
means doing.
To hear and obey, right? Because Shema means there's no word for obey separate from hearing.
Correct.
So if you're saying, so if you hear and you don't obey, right, then you didn't hear.
Right.
So then when they say, what is the greatest commandment? Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Shema,
The prayer.
right?
Yep.
Right. So he's like, you and me both know this one, right? Because it's always the religious leaders. It wasn't like a regular guy coming up and questioning Jesus. It was like, he's like, okay, we both know this one.
Yeah.
He says, and the second like it, you will love your neighbor as yourself.
Correct.
And because Jesus mic dropped so much, he was really saying, and this is the one you don't do. Yes, we both know you love God, but you don't take care of nobody.
Yep.
Because loving your neighbor is food, clothing, shelter, and community. You know what I mean? I don't love you because I march for you. I love you as if you got a need, I make sure you got it if I can.
Yeah.
Right. Because in Jesus' parable of the sheep and the goats,
Mhm.
when he separates the goats and the sheep, he lists all the things that they did.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm welcoming you in because you took care of needs, right? You loved people well,
Yep.
right? In my name.
Yep.
Right. So that's the catch, right? It's I love people well. I'm like, in Jesus' name? No, man. Then you don't love people. You just love you a lot and
Yeah.
do stuff you feel is good. And I'm like, well, high five, because when you actually meet him, I'm uncomfortable even talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because so it's like, yeah, I'll make sideways comments, but really, I wish it were possible that everybody would enter in, but they won't. And somehow that's fair. So I always have to think of it in the terms of my family. If I invite you over for dinner and you don't like what my wife cooks, that's your fault. But then if it comes to a point where you want to enter my house and not eat my food, but you want to sit on my couch, I'm like, I might put up with that. But then you know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm like, fine. But then one day I'm like, if you come in, you eat my food, you honor my family, or you stay outside. And they're like, yeah, but that's not love, bro. I'm like, you gonna come in and disrespect my family and not receive what I have provided for you as a guest in my home. All the other guests that have come over are doing that. So you not only be dishonoring me and my wife and my children, but all the other people that are cooperating with the family. You can't come in. Well, that's wrong, man. That's judgmental. Yes, it is. But I'm the judge of who comes in my house. Well, that's wrong. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not wrong. I was like, because if but we don't look at it that way, because we really think that ultimately, well, man, how did Brennan Manning say it? We say we're okay with God loving us because theologically God has to love you. But well, God doesn't have to do anything. For
No.
some reason, he loves us for his own reasons, and I don't know what his own reasons are. So it's either take it or leave it. And 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 it's like, why would you leave it just because you don't understand it? He's saying, come inside. So like with shelter, our verse for that represents Shelter Escape Church is when Jesus told the story of the master says to his servant, go into the highways and the back alleys and compel them to come in so my house will be full.
Yeah.
His house isn't full yet, but you have to go through Jesus who invited you. So if Jesus invites you and says, this is how you enter into my dad's house, and you don't want to enter in Jesus' way, that's on you. Jesus is cool, but you're translating Jesus wrong. I'm like, how am I translating Jesus wrong? Well, because you're saying he would draw a line and have a boundary and say, you can't cross my boundary. I'm like, yeah, because Jesus wasn't a hippie. He's God. So I've really come to a big conviction that when I talk about Jesus, I remember that he's God. Because like I really had this conviction as of late to not tell the Jesus story that everybody thinks they know. I just make it very clear Jesus is God and he made all the rules. And whereas in the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, so Jesus is the very voice that spoke everything into existence. And then he came and lived in this existence. He makes the rules. Nothing I can do about it. I just want to cooperate. I want to hear, well done. I don't want to hear, I don't know you. That don't sound good. So I don't understand is not good enough answer for me. Or even that person did me wrong. I'm like, sure, but Jesus didn't do wrong. Let's talk about it because I ain't doing you wrong. Let's figure this out. Because yeah, that person that did the wrong thing did the wrong thing. No gaslighting here. They did the wrong thing, but Jesus didn't do the wrong. Let's figure this out and get you to Jesus so he can do the healing part, right? Because Jesus went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the enemy, right? So Jesus did good stuff to open them up to being healed, apparently, right? So serving, right, providing needs is the preemptive to being a healer. I'm totally reading into it, but just Jesus did good and healed. So Jesus had a way of opening people's eyes as he served them to the fact that he was their healer. And so how many people that do we do good for? Do they have their eyes open that Jesus is their healer while you're serving? That is an interesting concept. Do we want to be credited for our good, or do we want only people to see Jesus? And that is the question for every person that calls himself a Christian in America. Do you want people to see Jesus, or do you want them to see you? And I hope I don't want them to see me. I mean, I hope not. I imagine sometimes I want credit. Sometimes I want some props, but if I stood in Jesus' way, oh man, I don't like that idea at all. That hurts. That's gross. Change the subject. That's terrible. Yeah, man. I'm just like, I'm grateful that you come and hang out with me and talk in circles with me. This is fun. I like these conversations.
And also, I like your Gerald socks. I'm a big fan of Hey Arnold.
Oh yeah, man. I went to the Dollar Tree, right? And they just had a 5-pack of these Nickelodeon socks, and I'm like, I want them. And they started this thing. They started this thing to where now I have all kinds of different colored socks, just because I bought those. And I'm like, well, I got to have more. So I have like Monopoly socks, and I'm like,
Hey Arnold is a good definition of one of the good definitions of morals.
Yeah.
He always had a not perfect kid, but just asked the right questions.
Nobody should ever get me wrong. I did not say morality is bad. I just said you can't define yourself by your definition of morality.
Right. Watch Hey Arnold.
Just saying. Just saying. I'm like, be moral as much as possible. Just
be like Arnold.
Point. Your morality should point to Jesus.
Yeah.
Not to you. Yeah, but this is good. This feels good. This is a good conversation. I feel good about it.
And
You know-
honestly, I really have to go to the bathroom as well.
Yeah.
I've been
So
holding it for a
on the
long time.
Audacity podcast, sometimes we need bathroom breaks. So we're gonna call it good. I mean, today I feel like we really touched on the fact that Jesus is numero uno. I mean, he's who we're looking at in the middle of everything we do, and everything matters to him. And at the end of the day, I hope that you'd have the audacity to challenge yourself to say, Jesus is here right now in the middle of me needing a potty break or anything else you got to do. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Brandon. All right, we'll see you next time.